one of the things that struck me was looking at the Samson sheet that you had sent me about the GONA and each one of these concepts. The next one that we're going to look at is mastery. And I just want to read directly from the list. It said, mastery. The GONA allows participants to take stock of how historical trauma impacts their communities and what fosters their resilience and holds them together. One of the things I've been working for Cocopah for going on 11 years now. And when I started here, I learned a lot. There was a lot to learn. And really, 2017 was the 100-year anniversary of tribal sovereignty of Cocopah being recognized by the federal government. And our chairwoman at the time said that was kind of a bittersweet moment. And looking at this now, we realize 100 years is not a long time. It really isn't. It may sound like it, but when you go through our museum, we have a wonderful museum. We just got a new annex built here. So if you come to the GONA, stop by the museum and take a look at that and the annex. You realize 100 years is not a long time. And so much has changed, and so much it has changed people as they recognize this. Let's talk about that, about the resiliency and holding together and reckoning with the historical trauma.
Yeah, I can take it. We have like in our indigenous communities, we have healing ceremonies, and it's important to look at what happened to us in the historical context and why we are facing so much of these challenges today. So, mastery allows us that sense to look at historical trauma. Yeah, some of us know about it, some of us don't, why it impacts us today. But we also like to shift into looking at more of the resilience and the strengths that brought us here and allowed us to have self-determination, allowed us to have sovereignty, to take ownership of our future. And that's what mastery does. We look at some of that unfortunate history that we had faced as indigenous people, and then we go into resiliency. And through the GONA process, we also do some healing in that process. So what does that look like? It depends on your community. There's communities that use the wiping of the tears ceremony. There's communities that do smudging circles and maybe a prayer song, or we ask spiritual leadership to come in from your community. We also make aware of the resources in your community to continue healing. And that's what mastery is about. And that stage of life, it really looks at adolescence and how can we give our adolescence group and as ourselves readdress the adolescent stage of our lives to continue that healing, and what in our ceremonies and what in our traditional community and also our present day community can we do to promote that and to make sure that that's something that we start thinking about in mastery.
And do we see a difference between generations when it comes to mastery and resilience, that maybe it's different for teenagers as it is maybe than for adults or elders? How does that fall on the spectrum in your estimation?
That's a good question, but we try not to close the door in terms of who youth, adolescents, adults, elders. We try to know that everyone is different. If we're looking at person-centered approaches, right? That's what's leading us in treatment prevention right now. Everything is unique to who they are, but nevertheless, some of the coping that we come up with and healing from historical trauma looks different in every community. So, and fortunately, that works for most of the community that we're working with at the time. So that's a good question, but also to remain mindful of openness and being willing to shift to promote and to apply some of these principles.